So I'm going to re-ask you that question that I just asked you, and maybe we'll get a little bit deeper on it. How are you
Okay.
really?
How am I really? That's a great, you know what? I like that question. I'm good. I was kind of low energy all weekend
Is
and
that because of the weather?
delayed around. No, I think it's because I had a hard time sleeping at the end of last week. And then I had a pretty hard Pilates workout on Friday and it just kind of all came together. So this morning I woke up feeling like myself again. So
Well,
that
that's a
always,
good thing.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
especially to start the week, right? I mean, we definitely want to
Yeah.
start the week feeling good. So I'm so glad to hear that. Where are you based?
I'm in Bozeman, Montana.
Oh, okay, cool. Well,
Yep.
super early for you. What time is it by you?
It's
7?
7. Yes. Yep.
Nice and early.
Where are you
Okay.
based?
I'm in New York City.
Oh, nice. I love New York.
Yeah, I'm in New York City. Okay. So let's dive into this. I mean,
Sounds good.
so many questions, right? Just from seeing your work pop up over the years on social or interviews or whatever the case may be. And I want to throw out, I don't know, maybe this is a cliche question to start. I really don't know, but it leads me to a very curious place because I've asked it before and I've
Mhm.
found different responses. And I think that's the best thing about podcasting, right? It's just hearing the unique perspectives of everyone, whether it be from your personal experience or work or beyond. I am
Mhm.
curious to learn what you find are the biggest, I don't want to use the word issues, but maybe hurdles with modern day relationships. Top three, per se.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's so many, and depending on the day, I might choose one over the other, right? So, I know for sure two. One is the main one is when couples get stuck in negative cycles, right?
Okay.
So, I guess that would kind of working backwards from there would be the core problem is that when each partner has an insecure attachment with themselves, that kind of stems usually from childhood experiences. You know, sometimes you'll have someone that picks that up in a really damaging adult relationship, but most of us are carrying stuff over from childhood. And so it leaves us with this really insecure relationship with our own emotions and our own selves. And then we bring that into a relationship with someone else who also has, that nature of relationship with their self. And then we just create this sort of fear-based cycles of communication. The way that we're communicating with each other effectively reinforces the insecurity that was already there to begin with, right? And over time, it just really starts to not only take a toll on their emotional closeness to varying degrees. You know, some people are obviously this is more negatively impactful to their lives than others. And then on the other side of the coin, it just gets in the way of them really being able to kind of work through problems that we have in life, especially where they have, they don't completely see eye to eye, which all couples have those areas. So then not only are they kind of harming their trust and emotional connection and sex life, a lot of times goes with that, then they're also having a really hard time just kind of working through problems, which creates more conflict, which creates more opportunity to damage their emotional bond.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm curious to learn if our attachment style can change like the seasons can. Meaning, one day you feel one way, maybe that's secure,
Mhm.
maybe the next day you feel anxiously attached. Like, is that
Mhm.
possible?
Yeah, I mean, I like to think of it as a matter of attachment states and attachment
Hmm.
style. So we all pretty much have kind of a predominant attachment style that we would define as, how it shows up in our very, very closest relationships where the emotional stakes are the highest. So, you might show up some way with your friends, but with a partner, you have more, most people, right? I'm speaking generally, have higher emotional expectations with a romantic partner. Most people are going to have a more prolonged period of grief, more powerful grief with a partner. So we're really looking at the relationships where that energy is the highest and where there's the most on the line. Okay. And so that's where we're really going to define your attachment style, because there needs to be an attachment bond. But then even within that, you'll have attachment, states where you might feel more or less anxious or avoidant about a topic. But, when I'm working with couples, 99 plus percent of the time, there's some enough pattern for me to latch onto
Yeah.
and work with as a consistently.
I'm sure. Yeah, I just look back on my personal experiences and I'm like, you know what? There were moments where I felt like I was just up and down, whether it be, I had anxious moments or I felt like super
Mhm.
secure in the relationship or not. So
Mhm.
I'm glad
Yeah,
to get some.
that's normal, because it also is depending on what's going on in the moment of the relationship. So I like to
Exactly.
look at it as overall climate. In an overall climate, do both partners feel secure? Do they feel valued? Do they feel validated? Do they feel appreciated? And then we have these periods of ruptures, kind of like bad weather,
Mm,
which all couples have. And so, the difference is that secure couples will be able to repair from those ruptures, and they will feel yucky in those ruptures, right? But they'll be able to repair and get back to their climate. Whereas insecure couples, those ruptures kind of define the relationship.
yeah. You're bringing me to a question right now. I'm trying to formulate this quickly. I understand that our negative cycles or whatever they may be stem from our personal childhood, right, as the individual. But how much of the way that we find ourselves in a relationship, whether it be anxiously attached, et cetera, also stems from our partner? So, what happens if our partner meets us where we are and
Mhm.
somehow finds a way to, I guess I don't want to use the term fill the void, but meet
Mhm.
us at a certain place where that anxious attachment is actually secure. Do you
Mhm.
understand what I'm saying?
Mhm. Yeah.
Okay.
That's called an earned secure attachment. And so that's
Mm,
what happens. You know, Attachment styles are relational. So we're always going to be, our level of fear and the way that we manage those relationship fears are always going to be heavily impacted by the relationship that we're in, even as something as casual as the person checking you out at the market. If they're giving you a dirty look and you have an insecure attachment already and that kind of dives into your stuff, you might have more of a reaction. But if they smile and say hello, you might feel safe and secure with that person.
mm,
So that, we're always working on it on the relationship level. But let's say, to your point, you go into a relationship and you have kind of a lean towards anxiousness, but you're in a relationship with someone who has more of a secure attachment, meaning they know how to manage conflict. They know how to, um, you know, be emotionally available without getting emotionally overwhelmed. That is going to pull out more of that secure side of you, because you're going to feel safe. The secure people, they feel safe in themselves and they help other people feel safe because it's just the way they are in the world. I could explain, that in more detail, but the problem is this with that logic is that most people who have an insecure attachment, they're not gravitating toward safe people to begin with. They're
right.
not gravitating towards security because they don't know what it is. They don't know what it feels like. And then, sadly, those with secure attachment are gravitating more toward other people with secure attachment because that's what they know. It's just what feels good to them. So that kind of complicates it. I would say that very much it is possible to earn a secure attachment. You can do that with lots of different close relationships in your life, even a therapist. That's
Mm,
kind of what you're doing with a therapist. A good therapist, you're developing a secure attachment with them first and foremost. You can't really grow in therapy without a secure attachment with the therapist. So, with that said, let's say, I'm going to throw out a statistic that is not that is not research backed, that to my knowledge, but I'm just going to throw it out there. Let's say 70%, 75% of people with an insecure attachment are going to end up in a relationship with someone else with an insecure attachment. Maybe I would probably say it's higher than that.
yeah. So
So
on
the
the flip,
goal for me, sorry, I just want
no,
to
no,
give
go ahead, go ahead.
here.
Absolutely.
Okay. The goal for me as a therapist isn't to say, hey, go find someone to be who has a secure attachment, because that's a pretty tall order when you really think about what goes into that.
Yeah.
My advice is find someone who's good enough and is willing to grow with you.
Mm.
And if
Yeah.
they're willing to grow, you can use that insecure attachment as a platform to learn and grow.
So it sounds pretty positive to me if someone is able to, from an insecure perspective, find someone that is secure. And essentially it sounds like proximity is power in that sense, where, being in proximity of someone that can handle conflict, et cetera, pulls that out of you. Am
Yeah,
I interpreting that correctly? Like, is that positive?
absolutely. I mean,
Okay.
it's going to be harder for the person who's more secure, because they're going to be kind of, for a while at least, a lot of the emotional, um, they have to sort of take more of the emotional responsibility in a
Yeah.
moment, right? But yeah, it's very positive. I just like to balance that out with the fact that it's hard to create that pairing to begin with. It's not, a lot of people, they read something about attachment and they say, okay, well, my job here then is, if I have an insecure attachment, to work on myself and then also just pair up with someone else who has a secure attachment. But that's not as easy as it sounds. And
Yeah.
one of those reasons is because it's difficult to even recognize it. Some people are intimidated by it. They're used to kind of a certain level of what for dysfunction in a relationship, for lack of a better word. So it's almost like by the time you're really able to recognize it and take it in, you have a secure attachment at that point.
Yeah. That
And
makes
and
sense.
you have also, varying degrees. Someone who has a very severe disorganized attachment, um, they're more likely to set the tone, and the secure attached partner can be also pulled down,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. So it
Yeah.
can happen both ways. But if someone with a mild anxious attachment, they find someone with a secure attachment, it's great. It's going to be great.
Okay, so let's touch on this because I want to be clear that I just heard what I heard correctly. Basically, what you're saying is that it could work the opposite way, where the insecure person can pull out from the secure person the not so ideal aspects of a relationship.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. Because it's really always working together.
Yeah.
It's more of just, can this happen? Yes, it can happen. It's more of needing to really understand what we're working with here. How severe is this person? There's stress that goes into the relationship that can tax both of them that they didn't expect to come. And so what we're talking about right now, though, is the exceptions to the rule.
Mm.
Um, for the most part, I think most people are going to find themselves in a relationship, if they're in one right now, who can pretty clearly say, maybe with some help on my part, yeah, I have more of that anxious attachment. Yeah, I have more of that avoidant attachment.
Yeah.
And
So
work with that.
you talk about the quote unquote rule. What is the rule?
The rule is that the majority of couples out there right now are in what I would consider, and what, people who do attachment work would consider, an anxious avoidant dynamic. As a couples therapist, easily 90% plus of the couples that I work with fall into that category. So you are going
Yeah.
to have people that, are going to, kind of not fit into that common trajectory. But when at any point in a given relationship, that's where I'm working. And most of the time, that's where I'm going to come in, is when however they got there, whether they both started out that way in childhood, or one of them was a little more secure to begin with and the other one was really disorganized. However they got there, somehow the emotional energy of their relationship shifted into this balancing act of the anxious avoidant
Mm.
relationship.
I love this. I want to go back to the first question that I asked in regards to like the biggest hurdles that modern day relationships are facing. You talked about
Mhm.
negative cycles, but I want to make sure that I'm not missing any. What's number 2 and 3?
Well, all of the problems really kind of begin with a negative cycle, because
Okay.
the problem is just a problem that, probably, most couples can work through most problems if there's
Mm.
enough compatibility there going into it. And then it's the negative cycle that causes those problems to be unworkable. So, if we're talking just surface issues, I mean, the the hardest things I see are blended family issues. I mean, those are really, really hard on people because there's so many just different competing attachments. Sex is a lot of times a big problem. Um, and yeah, I'm not sure if you're asking me surface level problems or just kind of root
Yeah,
issues.
I'm just seeing what comes to mind. There's really no agenda to it, but it makes sense. It definitely makes sense. And I guess I have to piggyback off that with asking, like, from your experience personally, work wise, etc., how recoverable, quote unquote, are relationships from those modern issues or hurdles?
I think they're very recoverable. I mean, with access to the right information or access to the right help, some
Mhm.
couples are more stressed and more distressed than others. That's just, a fact. And so if a couple is kind of like, moderately distressed, they have these insecure dynamics, they're getting into these negative cycles, and they have access to good information, my Instagram account, my book, other types of work. There's a lot of people out there that are either doing this type of work with attachment or doing the type of work that really feeds into it well. And it kind of is the same idea, but with a different name. Those people can actually learn skills to become more emotionally supportive and create an emotionally healthier environment,
Yeah.
which is, yeah, I mean, that's where the healing is. And, a couple who is more distressed, they might need that plus some therapy to help them work through it. But I do this work because I know how much hope there is. There's a tremendous amount of hope. It's just a matter of really, truly learning how to um, develop more security within yourself and communicate with your partner in a way that reinforces safety, trust, feeling a felt sense of having your attachment needs met, and a felt sense of emotional support.
Yeah. So if someone's listening to this right now and they find themselves in that position where they have those hurdles in front of them,
Mhm.
what do you suggest, maybe from even a mindset perspective, to understand that these are recoverable, right? Like
Mhm.
understanding like, hey, we're in a patch of our relationship where it might be a low moment. Like, what do you say to people to help them continuously commit day in and day out to that journey
Mhm.
with their partner?
Yeah. So relationships, we kind of, some people have a tendency to think of as this big, vague thing, right? Our relationship. But relationships are really just a series of interactions with your
Mhm.
partner. And every interaction, you have the opportunity to make it an emotionally healthy one, an emotionally supportive one. Even if it's talking about hard things, even if it's, maybe setting a boundary, it doesn't have to sound like, rainbows and unicorns, but it still can be an emotionally healthy interaction. And if you just go through life going, okay, how can I maximize the health of each interaction that I engage in? Then you will get there. It's just math. And, just to put this out there, get there isn't always staying together. That's
Mhm.
not always the goal. The goal is healthy, right? But I'm, obviously as a therapist, I'm in the business of keeping couples together because usually that's what they want when they come to me. But if people kind of get this idea that, even if you mess up, you have the next interaction to work with.
Mhm.
Pick yourself up. Nobody's going to get this right from the get go every time. It's just like anything else that you learn. You just have to learn those skills to use those interactions well.
Yeah. One thing that I really admired by a gentleman, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Lewis Howes. Do you know him by any chance? He has a podcast called The School of Greatness. And
Okay.
one thing that he did that I absolutely admire, and this is why I'm asking the question, in his current relationship, they started couples therapy right out of the gate. Like that was like
Mhm.
the first
I
thing they did.
highly recommend that, but
Yeah,
yes.
that's what I was gonna ask. Like, is it ever too early? Like I thought I think it's such a brilliant idea to be able to have an unbiased third party perspective where I mean there's always two sides to the story, but to like have that it's such a
Mhm.
foundational aspect. Like is there a point where it's ever too early to start?
I mean, I don't think so. I mean, I think realistically, what I would say is, hey, the minute we want to commit, we want to go forward, we want to be long term or spend a lifetime together, that's the place to start. I mean,
Mm,
some starting before that can be really helpful too. It's just most people aren't going to go to couples therapy with someone that they don't know that they want a long term relationship with. But
sure.
you could, if I believe that if we could get somehow, some way, my fantasy would be getting every couple out there from the get go, 5 sessions, the world would be a different place because most of us
Interesting.
are just not growing up with the skills. And so even if, what happens is things start out great at the beginning. Why? Because we trust each other. We haven't had reason to not yet. And then we start getting into these interactions where it just starts to chip away at the trust. And when they have fights, they go further apart and it's harder to get all the way back. And so if I come in and I teach couples or whoever, whatever therapist, it doesn't have to be me, obviously, how to come back fully and how to prevent the separations during these cycles, they have those skills. And it's damage control, and it's also just arming you. It's like going to a parenting class before you have a baby.
Yeah.
Is
So in
that
just five
adorable,
sessions.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, it depends. I'm throwing out an average,
Okay.
depends on the couple, but I think most people can get a pretty good grip on what a negative cycle is and where our vulnerabilities are and how we can prevent those and prepare them when they come up in 5 sessions. Yeah.
I love that. That is amazing. I want to throw not a curveball, but to see where this goes. What's a question you wish more people would ask you, and how would you answer it?
Let's see. More people would ask me. I wish more people would ask me, how can I be a better partner
Mm,
instead of how can I get my partner to change?
okay.
And I think, that doesn't mean that there aren't people asking that question. It just means that when I go on social media, what I feel is I'm looking at, just kind of the overall attitude toward relationships. I feel it's more about what can I get? What am I not getting than it is what can I give?
Mm,
And ultimately it needs to be a balance, but I feel that it's kind of skewed right now toward what can I get? What am I not getting? And you can start to get those needs met probably more profoundly by giving what you want than you can by trying to get your partner to change and give, 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 give. I think it starts with what you have to offer. There's a slippery slope there because we don't want one person in the relationship being the only one that's working and the only one that's giving. But I think that more people than not aren't so much focused on what they can actually give. It's kind of like, well, what can I do to change so they change? There's a lot of that narrative out there
yeah. So
right now.
What's your advice for people to like draw the line in the sand when it comes to, putting that energy forth and wanting that energy to
Mhm.
be matched? Like how do you develop a boundary around that? So it's like, all right,
Mhm.
I'm, trying to do my best here, but
Mhm.
it's not being reciprocated.
Okay, so imagine if you and your partner just have like this horrible diet, right? You just eat
Mm,
fast food every single day and like you're starting to have some health issues. And obviously, you want both of you to be on board and maybe try to just add some more vegetables into your life or whatever, just whatever anybody might do to kind of improve their physical health, right? So, if you, first you want, just because your partner isn't improving their physical health doesn't negate the fact that you want to improve yours, right?
mhm,
So, what are you going to do? Are you going to say, well, partner, if you're not going to work with me on this, then I'm just going to keep doing what we're doing. I'm just going to keep eating junk food all day and feel bad. Hopefully not. Hopefully the attitude is, look, I want both of us to be on this journey together. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to work on me and I'm going to work on the environment. So I'm going to do my best over here on my part, how I show up in every single interaction, what I decide to eat, a candy bar or an apple, right? Not to be food judgy. I hate that, but I'm just trying to use the best analogy that I can. here. I'm going to change the environment. I'm going to keep different foods in the refrigerator. I'm going to start going and walking. You can come with me. I would love that. And if, and let's just, sort of swinging that back to the relationship climate, there is value in being your best self in the relationship, no matter what your partner is doing. That's how you are putting in the energy into your own environment. That's how you are doing self-care. That's what is going to happen if that relationship ends and you move on to another relationship. Who do you want to have practiced being for the last year or so, right? If they aren't, coming along with you, which it's pretty amazing what can happen when one partner, just to your point about can one secure partner bring the other one up? I mean, that's it, right? You become your best self. You start behaving in a way that's healthy. There is a very good chance your partner is not going to have as much reason to be defensive or attacking or whatever. Now, if weeks, it's different for every couple, but if weeks or months or even years go by and you're sitting there going, all right, I'm doing all this work. I really am growing. I really am becoming my best self. And I'm still not really feeling fulfilled in this relationship. I don't feel close. I still feel, kind of like there's something more, or I have to be the one that, kind of ends the fights or whatever. That's when you might want to start looking at, whatever it is for you, more help, maybe breaking up, maybe if that's not a possibility, maybe accepting, okay, this is the best my partner can do, and I'm going to have to let go of any other expectations. So I just encourage people, be your best self, and your best self is not a doormat either.
You touched on something, and I think this is such a perfect segue. From conversations like this, I mean, we've done 300 plus podcast episodes, and of course not every single one is about relationships, but we've done quite a few on that topic. And one thing that I feel like pops up in these conversations is exactly what you just touched on. People in relationships begin to lose their sense of individuality,
Mm-hmm.
and they're no longer an individual, and they just become a unit. And I
Mm-hmm.
understand that's part of it, but to become a unit, there's two people, right? So I want to
Yeah.
touch on that a little bit deeper. What can we do to not lose our sense of self, like not lose who we are, not lose our passions, our interests, our hobbies,
Mm-hmm.
right? Maybe it's because, hey, you don't want to get up off the couch and make whomever you're dating feel bad, and instead of
Mm-hmm.
watching Netflix, as opposed to going out and getting your run in at night after work or
Mm-hmm.
something of that sort. I'm curious, like, how do we not lose our sense of self?
Well, it's a good question because, what I'm always looking at is, do we have too much well, I don't call it real closeness. I call it enmeshment when it gets too far to one extreme, but because real closeness isn't enmeshed,
Mm-hmm.
right? Usually if a couple is doing too much together, spending too much together, thinking that we have to think the same way, we have to feel the same way, or something's wrong, that's a substitute. That's a poor substitute for closeness that they really don't know how to find, right? And then on the other extreme, we have this like too much disconnection where we're not really meeting each other. We're not spending enough time together. We're not doing things to actively nurture the relationship. So I think that it's a matter of like really tapping into what you're feeling. Like, are you feeling like, hey, I feel like there's this part of me that kind of wants to do a little more for myself. I'm feeling kind of stifled. When we're around, we're bickering a lot, or I'm longing to spend some time with other people. That is your body saying, hey, maybe you need to get out and explore. You have a drive for self-growth or something. Maybe that's your body saying, hey, we need to go kind of vary it up a bit. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where you bring up the conversation with your partner, which is, what I'm noticing is that something inside of me is wanting to go spend a little more time apart. What's that like for you? Do you ever have those thoughts? Kind of opening up that conversation and then listening to your body and in taking some steps there, because
Yeah.
your body has a lot of really important, things to say to you. And it's really valuable to listen to that. And what happens is if you have an insecure attachment, some people might be scared to listen to that part. It might feel threatening. Well, what if I start going out and then they start going out? And what if this and what if that? What if they get mad? And you're holding all that in. It's not being talked about. That's the problem.
How do we know our body's talking to us versus our mind? Like, what are some of the signs our body would give us?
Um, a tightening feeling in your chest, a clenching in your stomach, tension in your back. And that's your body talking about emotions, but your mind is interpreting those feelings. So let's say your partner says, "Hey, let's watch Netflix tonight. I'm so excited," right? You're at work and, something in your body just kind of deflates. Something is happening right there. Your body is telling you something right there with that deflation. Your mind's job is that at that point to say, what's going on with me right now? What's that deflated about? It might be about wanting to go do something by yourself. It might be about any number of things, but the point is to not override that and ignore it. It's to listen, tap in and say, hey, what's going on? Why am I feeling this kind of disappointed feeling? Is there something else in my mind that would help me feel more filled up with my evening? Or am I kind of still hurting from a wounding thing that my partner said this morning?
Yeah. I want to take a step backwards because you touched on something that I think was brilliant. You talked about how individuals essentially are allowed to think and believe different things. How do we
Absolutely.
get to that point? Like, how do we get to the point where we accept that the way someone else grew up is the way they grew up, and it doesn't have to be exactly aligned, and we can coexist?
Mm-hmm.
Like, how do we get there?
Well, first of all, I think there's something to be said for overall compatibility in the areas where it really matters, especially values, how we want to raise our children as far as maybe religion goes and things like this. So I don't want to throw that compatibility out of the window because that matters too, right?
Yeah.
But then we also have to recognize that the most compatible person in the two people in the world will find somewhere where they're not going to see eye to eye. And that's okay. And it's okay if there are a lot of those areas, as long as you have enough resilience making compatibility over here too. It's kind of, do we have enough of a balance? If there's not enough compatibility, then there's just going to be too much conflict to navigate through. So I think that it's just a matter of being authentic about talking about the way you see and feel things about things instead of kind of hiding because you don't want to cause friction or a trigger. At the same time, the bigger piece probably is having the ability to step into your partner's world and understand where they're coming from. Say, you know what, listen, I don't, think this about X political issue. My background is very different. But when I look at their background and I look at their childhood and some of the things that they learned and struggled with, it makes sense to me that that's the conclusion that they're coming to. I don't come to the same conclusion. I would handle this issue differently. But at the same time, I get it. I get them.
Yeah.
That is, without letting go of your own view, your own perspective, your own feelings about it. And ideally the other partner is able to do the same. And
Yeah.
that's, they're okay with that. They're okay with, my husband and I, we see eye to eye in a lot of areas. And there are some areas where we don't see eye to eye. And I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I've definitely found that to be challenging at times where it's not to say that it's like my way or the highway, but it's like, wow,
Mhm.
that's so different. It's I think that's
Yeah.
a part of the journey, and I appreciate that elaboration. And you mentioned the importance of resilience in that area. I'm curious to learn what you feel like, what else we need, maybe characteristic wise or beyond, that contributes to a lifetime lasting relationship.
Um, I think that for me, it all boils down to the core, which is emotional support. I
Hmm.
think humans need emotional support from each other. And, part of emotional support, one component of emotional support is physical support, which always circles back to emotional support. It's physical stimulation and humans need that. But it also communicates you're valuable, you're needed, I want you, I love you, I'm willing to respond to you. So it all to me circles back to an emotionally supportive relationship, because when you can have a difference of opinion with your partner about some political issue that really means a lot to you, and they're able to say, honey, I see it differently, but I absolutely value your perspective. I'm willing to continue to try to learn more about how you see and feel about things. I'm not there yet as far as agreeing. I might not ever be there, and I understand the same, but that doesn't take away from my love for you. I mean, that's
Mm.
emotional support, in an interaction of disagreement about facts. And, um, I think that it's when things start to get, well, I'll stop there. You, you go.
No, I love
Okay.
this. I'm curious because maybe there's someone that's listening to this that might be in like the early stage of dating. So is there
Mhm.
any signs that we can start to look for where, I don't know, it might be a little uncomfortable to emotionally support someone in the way that you've elaborated on in such an early stage? So are there any signs that people could be on the lookout for to say, okay, cool, like this person has it?
Well, you and I are emotionally supporting each other right now, right? We've never met before. We're going to leave this podcast and go about our days, but yet there is an emotionally supportive interaction happening.
Mm.
You're listening to me, I'm listening to you, we're making eye contact. We're sending the message. I respect you. I value what you're saying to me. I mean, there's a lot of stuff happening. There's any number of things that I could be doing, or any number of things that you could be doing that could be making both of us feel really bad right now and
Mm.
unsupported. Mm-hmm. And you and I both know that there are probably many things we don't agree about and many things that we do agree about, right? So that's the case with dating. It's just that, you and I aren't going into this deep conversation about who we are and our childhood wounds and things like that, but we don't need to be. And so if you're on a date with someone and you're feeling heard, you're feeling seen, you're feeling like they really do just want to understand who you are and where you're coming from, even if you're just talking about how stressful it was for you to get to the coffee shop because you left your phone on the bus, and and they're engaged and they're listening, instead of being like, well, why'd you leave your phone? Is that something you normally do?
Mm.
And are they reciprocating, or are they just sitting there staring at you and not really telling you about their day, and not really, the conversation isn't flowing? um, Maybe they're nervous too. There's different reasons that could be the case, but we want to look for, am I divulging some information and then they reciprocate by divulging some information? Or is one person taking up all the space? Or, are we going too deep too soon? Do we not really know that this person can hold, some vulnerability that I'm bringing to the table too soon? We want to be vulnerable, but we want to be measured with our vulnerability based on how well we know and trust this person.
Hmm.
And so are we kind of going into that deeper, and more than anything, it's a felt sense of, do I feel valued? Is this person kind of interviewing me like I'm an object to kind of fit their list? Are they looking around? Do they see some, attractive other person over across the room and they won't stop looking? That's kind of like saying, hey, I'm not really present with you right now. So
Yeah.
we're really just looking for these really basic emotional support that every human can have or not have in an interaction, regardless of how close they are to each other.
You mentioned the quote unquote list. Are you referring to a list of what you want your ideal partner to be?
Yes. And
Okay.
a lot of people pay too much attention to that list and no attention to the felt sense of their emotional needs being met, appropriate to the relationship,
How
appropriate to.
important do you feel like that list is important for someone to have?
I do. I think sometimes the list might, it depends. There's different types of lists, different things motivating lists. But yeah, I mean, I think that these surface things are really important. It's just that
Mm.
they can't come at the expense of what really matters. Someone can meet that list, right? They're attractive. They have a great job. They came from a nice family. They like to go to the gym. They like to travel. They like wine. They like to walk on the beach and be an absolute narcissist.
Mm. Yeah. Is there ever too much on that list?
Yeah, I think so. I think if you're basically not in touch with what feels good in an interaction, as far as just, those emotional, that emotional reciprocation and the sense of connectedness, right?
Mm.
Then if you don't know what that is, you're going to rely too much on a list.
Yeah. I've
Don't
created
really.
that list a couple of times. That's why I'm asking. It's just I never knew if I had too much or had too little, but I
Mhm.
found that the more important list for me personally was the list that my partner would write about me. Like,
Oh, yeah, that's beautiful. I love
yeah,
that.
yeah, I felt
Yeah,
like that was more important.
yeah, I love that. That's
Yeah.
really sweet.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, 'cause
new
you know
book on the way. Oh, go ahead,
yes.
Julie. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
I'm always moving into making emotional meaning of that, but it's like I know I'm wanted. I know I'm valuable. I
Yeah.
know I'm being seen and understood for the strengths I'm bringing to the table. That's what, when you say that, that's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, I think it gives you something to strive for too, right? I mean, it's essentially like a list of goals in a sense of like
Yeah.
who your partner and granted, I'm in a relationship now, but like who that person would want to be sitting across from the table with, or on the altar with, or
Mhm.
whatever the case may be. It gives you something to strive for in every bucket of life, right? Relationally, financially,
Yeah,
career wise, etc. So, um,
absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah.
New book on the way. That's exactly why I asked you the question before, because your subtitle for the new book is Create a Relationship That Lasts a Lifetime.
Mhm.
New book, Secure Love. We're going to make sure that the link to that is in the show notes of this episode. But a couple of questions around this. We already touched on what you feel like allows for a relationship to last a lifetime, but you use a word in the subtitle of the book, and that word is create. And when I
Mhm.
hear the word create, I instantly feel like I have the power to drive where this relationship goes. And when I say I'm also referring to my partner, but I'm curious, how much do you believe that we as humans have the power, and how much is fate or destiny a part of a relationship?
Um, I mean, if, again, if you get into a relationship where there's just overall a sense of, compatibility, in the sense that, I always circle it kind of back to, if we were to have children, because that's where the compatibility, like, for a lot of couples, it's how are we going to raise our kids? Where are we going to live long term? How are we going to choose, our life together in the most impactful ways? If we have all of that sort of in place, I think we have all the power in the world. I really
Mm.
do. And I say that just based on my own personal experience. And I say that based on just working with hundreds and hundreds of couples, that we do have so much more power. I don't think it's a matter of not having power. I think it's a matter of not having the right information and not having had the right background, that you just kind of grew up learning how to be in a
Yeah.
healthy relationship. So
Okay.
to me, it's a matter of lack of that, combined with a lack of information for what you need to do to go forward to actually create that. Some people
Yeah.
figure it out on their own, with trial and error too. That's
Absolutely.
a possibility. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to give you a fill in the blank question. I've never done this, and I think this is our 302nd episode.
Oh, I feel
Um,
so special.
fill in the blank.
I'm
So,
terrible with spontaneity, by the way.
oh, am I
It's okay. Go for it.
okay. Secure love is possible for everyone if.
If they are willing to learn what it requires and put it into practice.
Hmm. Okay. What does it require?
It requires, for one, it requires, the ability to get your nervous system into a state in moments and interactions where you can show up as your best self. So sometimes people who have a hard time with that because they have some trauma reactions, or just too much, their triggers overpower them, they might need to go get some work to help them get their nervous systems regulated so that they can be their best self. And then it requires, knowing, how do I be myself, best self in this moment? Your
Mm.
partner walks in the door and they throw the keys down, and you've asked them 1,000 times to please put the keys in the drawer. You need to know what the healthy response is right there. All the self-regulation in the world might not be enough if you don't know what to do next, like what comes next. You don't want to be nagging your partner all the time. You want them to be able to live and have free will, but at the same time you also need your needs met because you like to have a tidy house and things put in their place. So those moments can be really hard for people, just not knowing how to navigate something that seems so simple on the outside.
You did really good for someone that doesn't like spontaneity.
Oh, when you're talking about professional, I'm there. It's when people ask me things like, "Who do you want to go to dinner with if you could go to dinner with anyone dead or alive?" And I'm like, ah.
Well, what's your answer to that?
Oh, that's so funny because I someone asked me last week and it was the lamest answer ever. I said first I said my husband, then I said my best friend because
Those are
I
great
genuinely,
answers.
well, because I tend to think so practically, and I was like, no matter how great the person is, they're still a stranger, and they're still like, there's no way I could really pick their brain in a 2 hour dinner. So it's
Right.
like it doesn't feel like it would be, like thinking, do I really want to like get ready and go leave the house? And who would I want to do that with? But at the end, I did circle back and I had an answer. Gabor Mate would be the person beyond my personal world. So
That's a great answer as well. That is definitely a great answer. I'm going to ask you a couple of last questions before we wrap
sure.
up here. This is a question that was actually asked to me, and ever since it was asked on this show, I said I'm going to ask every single guest. The
Okay.
question is, how would my life be different if I knew what Julie knows? And of course, I know that we just met, so it's more hypothetical per se, but I'm curious, how would my life be different, or how would our audience's life be different if we knew what you know?
Okay. Well, I just actually got chills because the answer is you would have really thriving close relationships,
Mm.
really connected, deep relationships where it feels just so good to give to that person and get back from that person,
I love
and
that.
a deep sense of empowerment that how to navigate that world with ease and navigate the ruptures. Yeah.
That's a beautiful thing. That is
I
absolutely a
love
beautiful
having
thing.
life because I have had a lot of life where I didn't have that. So I
Mm.
know the difference.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people could resonate and relate to that too. So
Mm.
thank you for sharing that. Again, I just want to make sure that everyone knows Secure Love. The link to the book is in the show notes of this episode, as well as Julie's socials, websites, all of that good stuff. Last question for you.
Great. And then I have a question for you.
Oh, okay. That works.
Okay.
If you make it to whatever year you want to live to,
Hmm.
you instill secure love in as many people as you want, you set your children up, whatever it is that you want to do, you accomplish in life. But you could only be remembered for one thing. Now, I'm not asking you how, the substance of this question is like, if a piece of advice was like etched into the tombstone, what would that advice be?
She helped people be their best selves.
Okay.
That's what it would be for sure.
I love that. I love that,
Yeah.
Julie. Thank you. This was such a beautiful conversation. It's going to shift a lot of lives, a lot of relationships, even. So I'm very grateful for the opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, 100%. Again, Secure Love, the link to that is in the show notes of the episode, socials, all of that good stuff. Do you have anything else that we should let people know about?
Um, Yeah, I mean, I have a website, thesecurerelationship.com, where I
Cool.
have therapists working for me and me that we do all the same type of work to help people get there. So if
Awesome.
I think the book and self-help on social media, again, there's a lot of us out there doing this work right now in different ways. And some people are going to find answers there and some people might need that next level. So
Okay, great. We'll have that in the show notes as well. But Julie, thank you so much.
you're welcome.
Awesome.
So my
That was
question
great.
for you, are you a Jets fan?
I am not.
Oh, dang it.
Are you a Jets fan?
Yes, I love the Jets.
Why do you love the Jets?
Okay, so it started with just loving their green helmets, honestly. Like I
Okay.
was just had something in my heart for them. And then I don't know, I sort of just kept going that way. And then I came to New York. I try to come to New York once a year for work stuff. And so I was out there in the fall and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to do it. I'm going to go to a Jets game. And so my mentor, George, he is in Connecticut, but he was a New York firefighter in 9/11, and he
Okay.
actually went in and rescued people. And so, but he's now my mentor that teaches me everything I know. And so I was like, will you go to the Jets game with me? He was like, okay. So I got front row tickets, like on the 20-yard line, and got in, just randomly caught them when they beat the Eagles, which was like
That's
amazing.
awesome.
Yeah, it was so great. And then so last night, if you're not a Jets fan, you might not know, but they won, like they had like the best game ever, like 30
I
something.
saw.
Did you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm a big fantasy football guy, so like whoever's on my fantasy team,
Okay.
I root for. But yeah, a lot of my friends are Jet fans. I don't
Okay.
root for any team that's New York based, which is crazy to say.
Uh-huh.
Outside of the Knicks. So
Okay. Okay.
everyone else, I'm like a diehard Atlanta Brave fan. Like don't
Okay.
born and raised in Queens, but yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm
I
weird with
see.
sports.
Well, I mean, look at me. I'm in Montana and
Rooting for the
from
Jets.
LA, and I'm a Jets fan.
I love
So
that. I love that.
yeah.
Bye.